factoring out the greatest common factor, or the GCF. To find the greatest common factor, or GCF, you can reduce an expression to individual terms. Next, reduce each term to prime multiples. Find common multiples between each term and begin factoring them out. As an example, we have 20x squared minus 30x to the third. Let's copy it over. So 20x squared minus 30x to the third. Okay, and let's split this up for reference to make it look a little bit easier. So let's look at the first portion of this, first term, 20x squared. And in this case, let's take the 20 and look at just the 20 for the meanwhile, just shortly. Two multiples that give us 20, what are they? Keep in mind, you can name any and write any as you choose, right? As long as they give you 20. For me, I'll make it easy to make it easier in the long run. So, but be aware, you can choose any multiple that you choose. I'll go with multiple of 2 since it's an even number, agreed? So 2 times 10 would give us 20. I could have also selected 4 times 5 would also give us 20, and it should work still. So notice, we have sort of prime factorization. Choose a prime number, but 10 is not. So that's the end goal, to get prime factorizations. So 10 is not a prime number, so 2 multiples will give us 10 now. 2 multiples will give us 10. It's an even number again, so 2. 2 times 5 gives us 10. So it looks like now we have prime factorization. 2 times 2 times 5 will give us 20. So 2 times 2 times 5 then. So keep in mind, this is where my 2's came from and where my 5 came from, agreed? It's through the multiplication. 2 times 2 times 5 should give us 20 back again from the beginning, right? And let's realize, in this case, we have x squared. X squared, that implies that there are two x's multiplying with each other, x times x in other words. So in other words, we can write it out as x times x to make it easier to visualize. Alright, so it looks like we're done with prime factorization of this particular term. Let's go on to the next one, 30x to the third. And in this case, since we have a 30, let's worry about the 30 first, the number first. Then we'll come back with the x's. 2 multiples that give us 30. Once again, it's an even number, so we can choose 2. 2 times something will give us 30, right? Or we can go with 3. 3 times 10 will give us 30 as well, agreed? So there's more than one way to do this. Be aware of that. For now, just say 3 times 10 is 30, but we could also go on 2 times 15 gives us 30, agreed? So, but in this case, it makes it easier to use the 3. 2 multiples that give us 10, pretty straightforward, right? 2 and 5. 2 times 5 gives us 10 again. And likewise, let's list our prime factorization of 3 times 2 times 5. And I like to list them in order. Hence the reason why I put the arrow there. That way you can see them in order, decreasing order. 2 times 3 times 5 makes it easier to visualize. And let's realize the fact that we have x to the third implies that we have 3 x's. So x times x times x. There we go, 3 x's. And here comes the interesting part, factoring. Let's realize factoring is sort of like you meeting a new person or somebody new, agreed? And you ask them, what do you have in common with me? Which movies have you watched? Which books have you read? Etc. This is the similar idea here, but with terms, mathematically, right? So what do they have in common? Which terms or which multiples, I should ask myself, do they have in common? So let's realize. I'm going to copy this in the middle, that way I have more space. But otherwise, I would typically work my way down. But in this case, I'll work it up here in the middle. 2 multiples that are in common between both terms. Well, let's see. We're going to start with one set of parentheses typically. Be aware of that. When you're looking for the greatest common factor, we typically will start with one set of parentheses. In this case, I brought down a negative. And that's because my negative from that 30x to the third was negative. So I just brought it down. Notice that on the right side, I didn't include the negative. But if that 20x squared was negative, then I would have probably been able to factor a negative. So overall, I would put on a negative on the outside, and that would have become a positive. Something to be aware. But in this case, let's realize that they both have a 2. That's in common. So let's put out a 2 there in the front. 2 times something, right? They also have in common a 5. So there's a multiple of 5 in common. So let's put out a 5. 2 times 5. And they have 1, 2, 2. Both of them have at least 2 x's, right? So 2 there and 2 there. There's an extra on the right side, agreed? So for now, let's just bring the x times x because there's 2 of them in common between both terms. And now, what remains? On the left side, we can see that that 2 remains, agreed? So let's bring it in. That goes in the parentheses. It's a 2 minus something, right? Because of that negative that we originally had. So let's realize also on the right side there's a 3 and an x. So that's going to be our second part of the parentheses. Minus 3x, because it's what's remaining. That's not in common between both terms. And there we go. That's technically our factor form, but we want to simplify it. 2 times 5 gives us 10. X times x gives us x squared. So 10 times x squared times 2 minus 3x. This is our fully factored expression. Be aware of that. And remember, there's more than one way to do it, agreed? So let's go for a really quick and alternate form of doing this. Okay, so 20x to the second minus 30x to the third. There we go. And we want to put it into a set of parentheses with the negative in the middle because there's a negative between both of my terms. If it was positive, I would put it positive. Okay, 2 multiples that are in common between 20 and 30. Hey, they both end in a 0. And this one, it probably would have been really easy to say they're both multiples of 10. And we can also notice they both have in common how many x's? Let's see, the first one has x squared, the second one has 3x's, or x to the third. So there's 2 x's in common. Therefore, we can call this x squared. And there we are. We're just about done factoring. What remains then? 10 times what gives us 20? That'll be 2. And 30 times what gives us 30x to the third? So it'll be 30 times, well, I should say 10 times what gives us 30? So 10 times 3, right? And then we factor out 2 x's. So therefore that means I have an x left in the parentheses there for that negative 3. So there's our final answer, just the same as what we got up above, agreed? So once again, there is more than one way to work similar problems like this, where we're looking for the greatest common factor. Greatest common factor in this case, as we saw above, is 10x squared. We want to simplify it as well, okay?